Yeah, the first question, there's a big meaty one we can talk about. So auth these days is nice and complicated. There are seemingly hundreds of ways to authenticate. Like we have passwordless email auth, we have pass keys now, we have two-factor auth, we have something called web auth n. So
Yeah.
can you walk us through the approach of like how you've added all of these different things to the framework?
Yeah. Like most of things, for example, something like passkey is a part as a plugin. So from for much part, like I'll just like whenever I need to create a plugin, I'll learn about that stuff as much as I can. If they have some kind of RFC that I can read, I'll go through that and I'll read like everything that I can get my hands on. And also I try to see implementations from other libraries or frameworks that already has done this. Especially like when it comes to auth, security is gonna be like a big factor. So you want to get these things right. Like you can't really, half assed. Like you have to actually get it right and get it correct. So like whenever I need to implement, for example, passkeys, actually our passkey implementation relies on a library called Simple Web Auth N. It's you probably have heard of it, but it's a popular as recommended like library. So if there's something that we can rely on, we won't try like to reinvent something that already exists. So we try to rely on that, but for many things, I would like to try to learn to teach myself like through a bunch of and to go through if they have actually, especially if they have some kind of spec, I'll go through that and learn each thing and try to implement it from there, I guess.
So earlier you were saying that you're really trying to implement parts of the flow in plugins and have them also isolated. So your two-factor is like in its own plugin. The interesting and challenging thing is when you're thinking about security testing for like an end-to-end flow, that may rely on one and or more plugins and may be harder to get a better understanding of like where possible vulnerabilities could happen versus like if you're looking at a simple linear like everything's in one file or like or whatever. So how does modularizing parts of auth into plugins change how you think about like security testing and just testing in general?
Yeah, that's a very good question because, like, again, as you said, if you add two plugins, that they just having two plugins might cause a security issue, but maybe just having one of them that wouldn't. So this is like a more interesting problem that for us to solve. And like I wouldn't say like especially for the user side, I don't think we figured like the whole way on how testing should work when they use our framework. But for us, like one of the decisions to have like right now, we distribute all the plugins, almost all plugins through the main package. So if you want to, for example, import a specific package, you don't install another package, just inside one of the package. The reason to do that was like just we want to have everything there to be able to test them and to be able like to see like how they can work together and like doesn't cause any problems. So that was one of the decisions that we did just one package instead of like having a bunch of packages separated out. Uh, that's one of the things. Actually, we will separate them out very soon because let's say one day we have some kind of security issue with one of the plugins. We don't want you to update like the whole framework to be able to just fix one. So we're gonna roll that out soon. But the challenge is mostly like again, a combination of plugins could create an issue that you would not normally get just by using one of the plugins. We tried to solve some of that problem by like really iterating on the plugin architecture, especially for V1. We like redo every plugin architecture again. Regarding, I remember like there was an issue with like some cookies would pass to the other plugin and the other plugin would like I forgot, but like there was a huge problem there before V1. So we need to like re-architect everything from scratch in order to be able like to fix this like plugin to plugin communication. And also we try to avoid like almost most like 90% of the plugins don't talk to each other. So like there is no communication between plugins, so they only exist by themselves and only exist as one. Like there is no like requirement dependency or anything between plugins, so they only exist as one isolated plugin. And that's what the reason. One of the reason for that was also like to avoid these like interdependence issues that would arise later.
What are the plugins that do have to talk to each other? That does seem like it might get pretty complicated.
For example, we have an OpenID provider. So there's OIDC plugin. For example, for the OIDC plugin, the JWT plugin need to talk to each other. The JWT plugin has like a JWT case in the point where you can get like the state to validate the JWT. So it will like ask the JWT plugin to validate a token and stuff like that. So like those are the two plugins that I remember like that has to communicate. For the others, it's just like more of like if there is a plugin there, and then they will just do specific thing. They just check like if the plugin exists or not, and do for example, we have a Stripe plugin. So for Stripe plugin, if you have the organization plugin up, it will like add something specific instead of like adding something different. But only like those two plugins have to actually communicate with each other so far.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be I'm sure that it's a challenge to like keep it that way, but it's probably better for everyone as like things related as possible.
Yeah, like much better. Like we do like, for example, for the Stripe plugin, we have for example, we connect a Stripe customer ID with a reference ID. Reference ID could be an organization ID or a user ID. We could have done like a user ID and then org ID based on the plugin that you add, but that will just create a bunch of problems for us. And that will just like, we want to avoid like the dependency between plugins as much as we can.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to ask a very specific question. I'm kind of biased in this because this is the only like sharp edge that I've hit with BetterAuth. So one of the hard parts of supporting like multiple databases or whatever is that, and the plugin system that you have, is that a plugin may introduce a new table or a new column or something like that in the database, and you have to keep the schemas up to date despite not controlling the sort of like actual underlying schema or the meta architecture or whatever is being used. So it's like the Prisma or Drizzle schema or whatever. So BetterAuth has a CLI right now that you can run, like migrate and generate to like generate like schema updates or like migrations and stuff. And this is the one area where I've found like some sharp edges. And this is like a common thing in the JS ecosystem, and it's that people do weird things with their build, or in providers have like weird semantics. So one example is like Cloudflare has this virtual module called like Cloudflare workers, and I found that like right now the BetterAuth CLI like kind of breaks on that, but it's not the only one by any means. This is something that I've sort of griped about a lot on Twitter. So when you're thinking about building tooling like that to like make things easier for people, how do you balance the just like kind of craziness that is the JS ecosystem?
Yeah, very good question. That's very crazy. I think when we built the CLI, the first reason we built the CLI was because, like, again, like I didn't like the idea of when I was using Nextauth, you'd have to copy the schema. For example, they give you like a Prisma schema, Drizzle schema, and all that. You have to copy that to project. I like never liked that idea. Like I would rather like run something and it would just like have that schema for me. And also, since you have plugins now, like for every plugin, you'd have to copy like every schema for every adapter, and it's just like not sustainable. So we actually needed to make some kind of CLI to make it work, because otherwise it's not gonna work. So for the edge cases, for example, for I think for Cloudflare, we try to provide the CLI as I don't think we have it up on our docs, but for people who ask us every day, everything, we'll tell them like they can use our internal API to call the CLI programmatically. So they don't have to run the CLI, they just can call it programmatically, and then they have their own thing. But that was like, I remember like that was like the first thing that I hit as well. Like I think I was using like OpenNext from DAX SSD. So they also like, I was using Cloudflare, and like I wasn't able to run the CLI because I don't have access to the environment variables when I was using D1. So that was challenging, but I think we have workaround there, and I think the team so far has been just me. So like it's now more people will be involved, and we'll have like more guides saying how to do like these small things get right. So hopefully like soon we'll improve like on the small details, especially for the CLI. We want to make that much better, especially now with like sharding. CLIs become more and more like, I don't know, powerful. Like people want to just run the CLI and do things for them. So we want to like make it distributable through CLI commands in the future. So that'll be something that to look for.